Hey guys, Into the End here, back for another update on the Mindlink deck. Where we left off on the last video was I showed you the version 2 of this deck, which is this one right here. We started off with generic aviaries, the Reddit user generic aviaries Mindlink deck, which was similar to this one but not quite the same. We tweaked it, and this deck performed decently well in the last videos that I uploaded, and it performed okay on ladder as I played more games, but not incredible, not an incredibly high win rate. If I have to ballpark it, I would say 55%. And the more I played this deck, the more I experimented with it, the more I realized that I'm just playing a gimped version of Elysian midrange. Most of the games that I won, I really won off of the back of the Elysian midrange cards. Like just attacking people to death with Sir Sophorx and Sandstorm Titan, for example. And the Mindlink were fairly irrelevant in most of the games. In fact, a lot of games that I win, I don't even draw the Mindlink. And drawing too many of the Mindlink combo pieces like Unstable Form and Mindlink itself and even Rain of Frogs, without drawing a sufficient amount of the Elysian portion of the deck, usually leads to me losing the game. So, and I came to the conclusion that while this deck is fun, it's gimmicky, if you like to play gimmick, if you like to play neat interactions like Mindlink and Unstable Form, this is perfectly viable, I think. Not so much for climbing ladder, but for maintaining ladder rank. So if you've gotten to a ladder position that you're comfortable with and you just want to hang around there playing fun decks, then I think this Elysian Mindlink deck is perfectly good. Now, in the last video, I mentioned briefly a black, red, blue version of Mindlink using Statutory Maidens and basically a Feln control kind of a core list. And it turns out that after a bunch of testing, the red portion of the deck wasn't pulling its weight. The Maidens weren't quite good enough, and the effort to play the Maidens by adding a third color was too great and causes inconsistencies. Also, when you have Maiden in play and you have Mindlink in play, even though you can make a lot of cudgels by killing your opponent's units, very often you don't have any units to put them onto because you don't run that many units in the deck. And if your opponent can remove their Maiden, then all is for naught. Now, another unintended interaction is if you have the Maiden in play and you use Feeding Time, you don't get the pig. You only get the cudgel from the Maiden. So another source of potential units for you to put the cudgels onto is gone, further exacerbating the lack of unit problem. And the other problem I found with this version of the deck is exactly the same as the earlier Elysian version of the deck, and that is that you fall behind on board very quickly and there's no way to catch up. Now, in theory, you can catch up by playing Withering Witch and Lightning Storm, but in actuality, that combo is very rare because this deck doesn't draw that many cards, and you're often forced to use the Lightning Storm pretty early to stabilize and stay alive. By the time you draw the Withering Witch, very often you won't have the Lightning Storm in your hand, in which case playing the Withering Witch is too slow. You play it on turn whatever 5, 6, 7 you drew it at, and then you have to wait on the following turn to potentially play the Lightning Storm or the Black Sky Harbinger, and very often that's already too late. And even if you do succeed in wiping the board with that combo, I find that in a lot of matchups, your opponent is able to come back from it very quickly, and you'll fall behind on board position again very quickly. And one of the reasons for that is because you do have a lot of fairly useless cards on its own. Like, you don't really want to play Unstable Form on your opponent's units unless you have the Mindlink. You do get the chance to play it on your own Withering Witch, which is actually a pretty good combo because the Witch basically serves its purpose after you summon it. So turning it into a random 6-drop is okay. But there's a lot of actually really bad 6-drops out there, so you're not guaranteed to get something useful. And you're also giving your opponent a lot of creatures when you use Rain of Frogs and Polymorph with Mindlink, so you do tend to fall behind a little bit. So I took away the red splash, made it into basically purely a Feln control deck that just has the Mindlink combo in it. The deck works decently well, but it has the exact same problems as a regular Feln control deck. You are a complete dog to Armory. A really, really bad matchup against Armory, actually. Surprisingly decent matchup against Chalice. In fact, I think all of the different color versions of Mindlink combo deck, every single one of them has a very high win rate against Chalice. So I don't know what the reason is. Maybe this deck is just naturally more grindy than Chalice. Maybe Rain of Frogs completely destroys Chalice. But either way, if you want to beat Chalice, these decks are actually pretty good choices. So let's I'm not going to go into the card per card explanation of why these are here. I think 90% of this deck is just your typical stock Feln control cards. I also understand that they don't always run 4 copies of Witch, and there's different numbers of certain cards, like maybe more Deathstrikes, but the way I have the deck now, I feel pretty comfortable with. I took the Lightning Storms away from the deck because I actually didn't find him to be very good. I find him to be very underwhelming, actually. I find that in the beginning of the game, I would be more happy playing a turn 1 Suffocate or Permafrost and turn 2 Annihilate to remove things out of the way, rather than using a Lightning Storm when they have 2 or 3 on board. I mean, or you can just trade 1 for 1 with a Lightning Storm, either way. I haven't been super impressed with Lightning Storm. It has been a pretty dead card in my hand frequently. Also, when I have a board full of 2/2 pigs and 1/1 frogs and Withering Witches on my and Yetipult on my side, I often don't want to play that Lightning Storm as well. So I removed it. That might be a mistake. We might put it back in later on. We may add in a couple copies of a Lightning Strike to deal with weapons, which this deck is a complete dog to. So there's definitely some more room for fine-tuning, but this is the version that I'm running right now. We're going to record a few games with this deck. From personal experience, this game's win rate is even lower than the Elysian version of Mindlink. But I haven't played too many games. Perhaps I just ran into bad matchups. But we're going to do maybe 4 or 5 games on camera in a separate video, just to show you how the deck runs. If you're interested in any of these decks, maybe you can improve upon them and make it more competitive. But I also tinkered with a green version of the Mindlink deck, and I think of all the versions I have, this one actually works the best. And I think it's entirely on the back of the power of Harsh Rule. I think this is one of the only decks that can completely reset the board on turn 5. And if you're able to reset the board on turn 5 and play a Castle Brigade, that's a really big tempo swing. It comes at a card disadvantage, but it comes in a massive tempo swing, and you make up for the loss of card advantage from the Harsh Rule gaining a lot of card advantage. So together, these 2 cards combo really, really well. And this deck is actually the most defensive early game, and a very powerful mid to late game, and the ability to reset with Harsh Rule. So this is actually the most powerful version so far, I think. And we're going to get into this version maybe in the next set of videos. But for this one, we're going to focus on the Feln control version, and I will record those games separately. Thanks for watching, guys.